Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall and I'm a folklore researcher. This podcast is of course free, but to ensure it continues, it does require support. Thank you so much to all those who kindly donated on Buy Me a Coffee. And a big thanks to my first official patron, Maz. If you can support the show and its continued research, there are a number of tiers to choose from, starting from £1 a month at patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. From the Fairy Folk tier upwards, you'll have access to my monthly path workings, which are led meditation visualizations. These aid inner journeying. With your support, I'm hoping to dedicate more time to this research and producing fortnightly podcast episodes. If you can't afford to support, then please do rate the podcast, and it would be a great help if you can share your favourite episodes with your friends. Thank you. The encounter shared in this episode is the sort that we all might imagine when we bring to mind a fairy encounter, the sort that appeared in 19th century collections of Irish folklore. And this did take place in Ireland, but was experienced just a few years ago by a young Australian man travelling around Ireland in his campervan. It's a truly wonderful encounter, pretty epic, and he feels very lucky to have experienced this firsthand. There's a whole host of apparitions here, and each brought their own vibe to the events which unfolded. I hope you enjoy this share. I love hearing these stories, and myself and my guests share them in the hope that they bring greater understanding to the Earth's natural otherworlds, which, as yet, we know little about. Please note that I've removed the name of the dolmen, as one of my main concerns is to protect the environment in these locations and the beings that reside there. Get yourself comfy for this one. I'll be back at the end for a chat. Time to renovate, transmutate. Time to renovate.
So it would have been 2 years ago. I was parked up at Dolmen, which is in Ireland. And I was just hanging out in the middle of the night. It was not quite midnight, it would have been 11 or 11:30, something like that. And I was just looking for inspiration, playing guitar, hanging out. And I started to notice, well, at first I felt like I was being watched. I got that feeling that people always talk about with ghosts or spirits and stuff like that. And there were some tall, shadowy figures that were standing around the perimeter of the dolmen, away from me, say 50 metres or so. They were kind of just vanishing and reappearing in different places, but they were very much there and could just kind of feel like I was being watched. And so I didn't actually stop playing guitar, which I was happy about. I just kept playing and was in the moment with that. And I noticed there was a few orbs that started to appear that were flying around the top of the dolmen, and they were pretty much just dancing in the sky and changing size and shape, and they were bright white lights. That made me stop playing guitar. That fascinated me quite a lot. They didn't really last as long. The whole time they were really tall, shadowy, masculine figures. That's the best way that I can describe them.
How tall would you say they were?
They would have been 7 foot. They're taller than one I've ever met, 7, 8 foot, something like that. And there was a really authoritarian energy to it, is the way I would describe it.
Yeah.
And I became worried that I was being disrespectful by hanging out there in the middle of the night and playing guitar. That is, a sacred place, and I've really got no idea what went down there. I don't think anyone really knows fully what the dolmen were used for. They know they were burial sites and stuff like that. But there's still a lot of mystery that surrounds it. So out of respect and also out of fear, to be honest, I decided to go back to my van and I put my guitar away. And I was just sitting in. I started the van because it was middle of winter and I needed a heater to defrost a little bit. And in front of my van, there were three. I can't describe the colour. They weren't, like, it was a really pale, somewhere closer to brown, in between black and white, beige. It's really, I can't put my finger on the colour or the shade, but there were three little people. At first I thought they were children, and they were skipping around and holding hands, twirling, and they all put their hands up above their head and joined hands in the air and just began to skip around in a circle together. And they got maybe 5 meters away from the front of my van and just disappeared. And I think it lasted about 30 seconds. It felt, there was a really peaceful energy that was there when I wasn't at all frightened when I saw that. That took away the fear of what had just happened at the dolmen itself. So my van was parked quite a way away, a few hundred meters away from the dolmen itself. And yeah, that kind of happened very quickly, but it's very memorable. I wish I could describe it better, but their clothes that they were wearing were identifiable, kind of what you would imagine seeing in an old movie from ancient times, maybe what a peasant would be wearing or something like that.
Yeah.
Nothing glamorous, just, pants and gowns. So there was 2 female and 1 male.
Right. How did they differ in looks, being female and male? Was it just the clothes or anything else about them?
Just the clothing. Yeah. There were no facial features that I could recognise.
Okay.
Just the clothing. And
how tall were they, do you think?
With their hands in the air, they would have been about 3.5 feet tall, kind of thing, with their hands fully extended up. So quite short, a couple of feet. Which it took me a while to actually, and after speaking to some people, to think about the fae being involved here, because I kind of had a stereotypical idea of what a fairy might be, honestly more cartoony, something maybe inches big, but done a bit of research into that since then, and that's not always the way that people describe their experiences with them. And the locals in the area seem to agree.
When they came dancing, were they aware of your van? Did they look towards you, or were they kind of tied up in their own moment? Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress, and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com.
That's really hard to say. I think they were tied up in their own moment, but they also, I definitely believe they knew I was there and they were showing themselves to me. Just with everything else that happened prior to that in the build-up and where I was, I think also the fact that I felt frightened, that they maybe wanted me to not feel frightened, and so they showed something joy.
Yeah, so they kind of responded to your fear and maybe showing their appreciation for your music even, because perhaps they were kind of showing you that they were actually enjoying the music while you were playing and that you hadn't been kind of disrespecting or dishonoring the sacred space in any way, in fact.
Yeah, totally. And I have read stuff along those lines where music can bring them out and it's something that they enjoy. And so, yeah, I have considered that maybe I should have got the guitar back out and kept playing for them.
But you were spooked by that point.
I was, quite spooked. Actually, jaw dropped.
Yeah.
I had never experienced anything quite like that before in my life.
No.
Or anything, to be honest.
Did you feel it in your body anywhere? Was it a kind of physical sensation while it was happening?
Not so much, I would say, in my heart. Like I just had that calming energy come over me. Whereas prior there was a very negative energy at the dolmen. Like, you imagine like an angry school teacher giving you that stare that they might give you if you're acting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of the taller beings do you think there were?
I think there was 4 of them. They weren't all present at the same time. I saw no more than 3 at once, but just it was really bizarre that they were reappearing in different places at different times, but it just felt like there was 4 of them. It's one of those things I can't really explain. It's just a feeling, but you feel that kind of stuff in the moment, and that's the feeling that I had.
And they were around the perimeter, almost as a circle might form around the perimeter. How far away from the dolmen?
So they would have been about 50 metres away, and they would have, when I saw the 3 at once, they would have been spaced out maybe 20 metres, 15, 20 metres.
Did you say 15 metres away?
From each other, but about 50 metres away from the dolmen.
50 metres away, right. So quite far. Yeah.
Which is something that I did think about as well, that if they were keeping that distance from the dolmen, maybe that was the distance that I ought to be keeping as well. Because I really was right there. I still do think that was quite disrespectful. I honestly didn't really consider that. I just was in the moment doing my thing and thought it would be cool if I went and sat closer by.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about that because, I mean, well, I have myself, gone inside the chamber of a dolmen to meditate, and it's been one of the, loveliest experiences and powerful experience, and I think that as these were for, as you say, we don't know how the societies used them, but I feel that they should still be accessible, really. I mean, the trouble is, I guess you do get idiots that, vandalize, but that is so rare. I think that they should be accessible to the public, but I do understand, your sort of concerns about that as well. That, but I don't think it's unusual that you would have sort of watchers or guardians around the edge, and also it sounds like you got close to the action by being right there. I mean, in order to sort of pick up on the energy and sense that, I guess you've got to be right there, haven't you?
Yeah, well, totally. I don't think it's something you'll experience from a distance.
No.
I also think just being there alone, without all the noise, like during the day when I was there, when there was, all the other tourists as well having a look around, nothing felt strange about the place at all. There was nothing eerie or spooky about it, or it was just quite a sight to see.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? That, between day and night, where in daytime all the energies are up and around and everything's moving really fast, and and then when night comes and the energies kind of fall again, it's like it allows a space for something else to rise, and you can really get close to a place in its stillness, and you have an opportunity for the energies within you to rise as well and meet that in a way that just can't kind of happen in the sort of distractions of the day.
Yeah, totally. I think also playing music gets me into quite a meditative state as well. Would have played a part.
Definitely. And the so the orbs, what sort of size were the orbs, do you know?
They changed. They went from really small, so the size of a coin to the size of a football, and they would change as they were moving. They would grow and shrink and disappear and reappear at different sizes. It was quite frantic, actually, the way they were behaving, but it was really quite purposeful and elegant at the same time. It felt like they knew what they were doing, and they were doing it for a reason. What that was, I've got no idea. But it felt like, it just felt like they were meaning to do everything that they did. They had a consciousness, and they were dancing in a way, in a very strange way.
It sounds really beautiful. And was that just after you started playing?
No, so I'd been playing for quite a while, probably at least half an hour. I'd gone through the songs and
what kind of music were you playing as well?
Kind of like, I want to say Irishy kind of jiggy stuff, but just folky, bluesy, jiggy kind of stuff.
Yeah. Is it? Were they songs that you had written yourself?
Yeah, they all were. Yep.
Right. Okay. So this is from your heart as well. This was your own sort of offering to the night, to the experience, to the place. Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful. That's really wonderful. And all the orbs were white.
Yeah. Very bright white. Again, it's really hard to offer something as comparison to the color. It's very, very bright, and I guess heavenly would be a term I could use to describe it.
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned that when you got back in your van, then something else happened.
Yeah. So after the Fae, I'm going to call them, I do believe that's what they were, after they had disappeared, and I was sitting there just trying to work out what had happened, and I was still looking towards the dolmen, hoping I could see the orbs or something again, and nothing was really happening. And I felt a really intense energy from behind me, and I just instantly, I put my foot on my brake pedal, which made a big red glow at the back of my van, and I looked in my mirror, and there was a girl, teenage girl, young teen, dressed in a white gown, who looked miserable and terrified and upset. She definitely wasn't a happy character, and she was standing behind my van, just peering out the side, looking at me in the mirror, and I instantly started the van and drove away as fast as I could. That absolutely terrified me, and I just got out of there as quick as I could, and kind of felt like something was with me, for about half the way down the mountain, and I ended up finding a nice light place where I felt safe and slept the night in the town as opposed to on top of the mountain, because that was really quite terrifying.
Yeah.
But there is a link to that as well. When I told my sister about this, and she did some research on the area and found out that we have ancestral links to that particular place, where our surname is linked to it, and that kind of made me consider a few things as well that about ancestral links. And yeah, I don't know, it was really quite bizarre because I had no idea that we had any kind of link to that place. I'd never heard of that place before I found it. I didn't find it on a map. I found it just by driving and following signs, like street signs.
So you were just kind of doing a bit of a tour of Ireland at the time?
Yeah, so I just bought the van and was just cruising around. I was trying to find as many dolmens and cans and stuff like that as I could, because they really do interest me. And I did come across quite a lot, met some really cool people that showed me some stuff on their properties, and really found they were just everywhere. But yeah, that one caught me, and I spent about 2 weeks in the area just hiking around, looking at different portal tombs and stuff in that region. Pretty much every day would wake up and leave the van where it was and start walking a different direction. And yeah, it was a really cool experience. But yeah, once I found out that there was an ancestral link to the area, that kind of blew me out. And yeah, so I'm not sure, maybe I was meeting someone that I was related to at some point, or an energy that someone had known before. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit trippy to think about all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. The figure, when you saw them, did they seem, how real did they look? I mean, were they kind of fuzzy around the edges? Were they translucent, partly translucent? Were they?
I'd describe them as shadowy but solid. Again, there was no like clear facial features or anything to define them by, just their physique. They looked shadowy, but they were very much solid at the same time, if that makes sense. Again, it's really hard to describe.
But you could tell that they were sort of in distress or upset.
Just based off the energies, is what I'm taking that from. Just
you could feel it, yeah.
But again, I guess that could have also just been fear of the unknown giving me that impression.
I don't know. I mean, I trust it. I would trust that feeling in the same way that you like with the Fae dancing, that entirely gave you a different energy altogether of peace and joy.
Yeah.
And yet the kind of the outer ones, let's call them, the guardians, they gave a very sort of, watch what you're doing there kind of vibe that you might expect from a guardian. And then, but this one, I mean, that is it's upsetting, isn't it? Because it's a human form, and then it's maybe a spirit of some kind, and that is quite creepy and frightening. Well, very frightening, especially when you're on your own somewhere and you've just been through some quite extraordinary experiences. So as you took off, could you still see them remaining in your mirror, or did they disappear at that point?
No, I couldn't see anything. I could just feel a negative energy with me for half down the mountain. But everything was gone. I saw no more orbs or figures anywhere.
No.
Mind you, I was it was the middle of the night, and I was trying to get out of there as quick as I could, and I was really focused on the road and trying to be safe.
And then, so you said that you had a chat with someone local.
Yeah, so I went back there a few days later, and I was again, just camping out, playing guitar, and I was really kind of, as terrified as I was prepared to see everything again. I was kind of hoping I would, and I didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, it must have been 1 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there. A tiny little old Irish lady knocked on the window of my van and scared the absolute jeebus out of me because I was on edge waiting to see something. She just kind of wanted to make sure I wasn't up to no good, and she found out I was an Aussie travelling in the area, and we got talking, and I thought I'll bring it up with her, and she kind of laughed at me and said that you should try living here. It's the tall folk and the little folk, and that they quite often play tricks on her, and there's a few houses in the area, and everyone has experiences quite regularly by the sounds of it in that area, and it's just part of day-to-day life that they go through that, and it's just it didn't stun her at all, which really stunned me.
I love that.
You know,
I love that she picked her time as well, sort of 1 a.m, right?
I just saw that was really brave of her too, because I don't know, I wouldn't go up to a random van on some mountain in the middle of the night and knock on their window. Better doing that than meeting the Fae, I think.
You didn't for a moment think maybe that she was actually Fae herself?
I instantly did, but when I seen how human she was, I thought that's different to last time. This is a real person.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'm so glad that that locals are actually talking about this. Did she give you any kind of wisdom, like, oh well, you should do this, or definitely don't do that? Did she give you any of that kind of information?
No, she didn't. No, not at all. I did meet a woman who was selling jewellery that I spoke to about it, who kind of just warned me not to mess around too much and not to try and entice them out, that could be very dangerous. She basically explained if they want you to see them, they'll show themselves, but not to go and look for them, basically, not to try and summon them out in any kind of way like that, which I thought was interesting and quite terrifying as well.
Because that was after you'd gone back there to play your guitar. Yeah,
that was actually in Galway a month or so later after all this. And I was really keen to just talk to anyone who was open to that kind of thing about it and try and get anything I could. Kind of local knowledge. But
definitely. It sounds like the woman that you spoke to in Galway was, look, this is what's been passed down and this is what you shouldn't do. And then there's other people who have to just have their own relationship with Fae, whatever that might be. So maybe they leave an offering every full moon, or maybe they've had an experience themselves that they didn't invoke, but it just kind of happened. And so they now feel that they have this sort of relationship. And people have got really, really strong opinions. I feel that you can have your own personal relationship with the Fae, whatever that means to you. And that really, there aren't any rules apart from, as you say, whoa, this doesn't feel right. I shouldn't be going in here, or no, I need to get out of here. That is your relationship. That's the bit where it says, no, you need to go now, and you listen and you leave. That, hopefully you do. And in the same way where you get somewhere and you think, oh, this is a really amazing place, and I feel like I need to be here and maybe offer something of myself here, whether it be a song or just a thought or whatever. So I think it's, I think I would always say to somebody, trust your own instinct.
100%. That gut feeling, I think, is the communication.
Yeah.
But I would also tend to think that I would be very open to the idea that they have individual personalities and there's not one set way to deal with any person in particular. Like, everyone is different, and so all the experiences over history that have culminated into what people say and folklore and ways to do things and ways to not do things is just based on the experience of that they've had with a particular one. I think that's why it's important what you're doing with the podcast, so that people are talking about it again, as opposed to, I think when the church came through and kind of suppressed it, and it became something that you shouldn't necessarily open up about, or something that was weird and looked down upon.
Yeah.
People stopped communicating about it. There's a very big taboo about it here. People just find it a really strange concept. But so if we can get that dialogue and acceptance and share experiences, and we can all get a better understanding of it again, almost like starting over with a little bit to kick off from.
Yeah, I agree. So you did a bit more kind of traveling around with the van, and but didn't ever experience anything quite like that.
I did have one other experience at Passage Tombs. There's a few cairns that you can get to. They're a bit of a hike, and it was a really cool day hiking mountains, and there's a few that kind of align, and you can go inside and leave an offering and all that kind of stuff if you want. And so I did that, and I had two of them I had really cool energies, and one I had a terrifying energy where I just got a couple of feet in and decided, no, I'm not supposed to be in here. I'll leave this one alone. That was interesting. And so I've hiked back down the mountain at the end of the day, and I just kind of stopped to look around. And this one, I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure there was a figure that would have been about 4 foot tall that just kind of went skipping past me for a brief moment, like a few seconds. But it was a male figure. He was side on, had a pointy nose, he was shadowy again, but was clearly definable facial features. It was so brief that it just, I don't know, I couldn't help but think maybe that was like my imagination, because I'm looking for this kind of thing a little bit more than I was before. But to me it was very real, but I'm also like, I have a very skeptical side of my mind where, I like to remain skeptical, and I think I will that one just because it was so brief. The human imagination is a powerful thing.
Yeah. Pretty cool experience though. I mean, that is going to stay with you forever, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Time to renovate. Time to renovate.
So, wow, this telling was really quite spectacular. Most early collected folklore is read with a good pinch of salt. Entertaining as it might be, the tales are glaringly steeped in superstition and morality tales, with the looming shadow of the church warning you to steer clear. The folklore rarely has any bearing on modern experiences, but this experience really blows that conclusion out of the water and tempts us to look again at the folklore with fresh eyes, placing our rational brains to one side. Stories of fairies dancing in circles have been told for centuries. The key thing here is that our guest said he felt a real sense of joy and peace in his heart while watching the dancing fairies. I believe this is something we can trust in, our instinct. Though it's interesting that just moments later he scared off the mountain, away from the landscape which he has been deeply communing with. Was the apparition of the girl warning him away, or was she trying to draw him out of the van? Was she a spirit connected with the landscape, or connected through his ancestors? We'll never know, but again he trusts his instinct and gets out of there as quick as he can. The guardians around the edges are the first indication that non-human energies are alerted to his presence. I love the way they appear and reappear and give off the authoritarian vibe. These are followed by the orbs. We've had mention of orbs as possible manifestations of fairy energy in episode 8, and we'll feature a further orb experience on a future episode. Again, these energies feel pleasant and wondrous to behold, and this is the general experience for those who perceive orbs. Orbs seem to be a compressed manifestation of energy, They can be seen around humans as thought forms or potentially spirits relating to that human. They can sometimes denote spirit presence in a landscape or in buildings. They're very much connected with fairy energy also, and they often pop up in photos taken of sacred places, particularly dolmens. The contrast between the two conversations with the local women is incredibly interesting. On the one hand, you have the lady that lives right in the vicinity of the dolmen, and she doesn't warn him or offer advice. It sounds like she's checking him out and ends up having a good chat with him. She's completely aware of the otherworldliness taking place, and is really open about that. She even provides some real insight into the fact that the locals have come to accept the strange beings in the vicinity and have learned to live side by side with them and their tricks. It's become part of day-to-day life. On the other hand, we have the woman selling jewellery who warned our guests not to mess around or entice them out in any way. This sort of view is more aligned with the warnings in folklore and similar superstitions and beliefs around the dangers of fairies and dolmens. This perspective and its beliefs remain very strong in Ireland. There's a polarity here between the two women's reported relationships with the fae and their willingness to connect with it. But it's interesting to note again that our guest himself had experiences that swung from one polarity to the other. First the fear of the guardians, then the awe of the orbs, a gift of peace and joy from the dancing fairies, and then utter terror upon seeing the young woman's traumatized form. As always, I thank our guest for offering this insight into the worlds of the fae. This is our first story from Ireland, but it wasn't told by a native, and I do wonder if there are more stories from Ireland waiting to be shared. I'm always keen to hear from listeners, whether they have something to share privately or publicly. It all helps to form a picture as part of the research, and hearing these encounters really help others who've experienced similar strange events. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please share it with someone else whom you think might enjoy it, and you can tweet about it on _remain_curious. I'm a bit new to Twitter, so bear with me there. Thanks for listening and for joining me on this path into what are new frontiers for most of us. Much love, and always remain curious.